Welcome to Money Talk with Tiff, a podcast where we discuss everything money from tips and tricks to current events. Follow me on my journey to become debt-free and meet other cool people along the way. I am your host, Tiffany Grant. Now let's talk money. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast. Today, I'm actually on a solo episode, so I don't have a guest today. I wanted to give you all a break because we have been going so hard with guests. But it's great because there's so many people out here that have such interesting stories. So I want to keep that going. But this week, we are going to focus on entrepreneurship because I don't know if you all saw it, but I had an article published with CNBC and Acorns, and it talks about how me and my husband run our 6 businesses, and all of them are pretty successful. So I wanted to take this time out because I've been getting so many people reaching out to me about entrepreneurship, wanting to start their own businesses, wanting to grow their own businesses. So I just wanted to do a quick episode on some things I feel are important when it comes to entrepreneurship and things that you need to nail down before you even get started. So remember in school when they told us we need to answer the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how when we're answering questions about a story? Well, the same thing goes for entrepreneurship. So if you think of your entrepreneurship journey or you think of your brand as a story, you need to answer who, what, when, where, why, and how. So I want to start with why, because your why is so important. You need to figure out why you're doing the product or the service or whatever it is that you decide to sell. Why are you doing that? And I like to go through the process of asking myself why 5, 6, sometimes even 10 times to get down to my true why. So what that looks like is, for instance, why did I start Money Talk with Tiff? Because I wanted to work for myself. Why? Because I saw what being an entrepreneur can do for you. Why? Because I want to build a legacy. Why? Because my kids deserve to have something that passes down to them. Why? And so on and so forth. So you get the idea. But you just ask yourself why at least 5 or 6 different times to get down to your true why. So why is that important, Tiffany? Well, because it's intrinsic motivation. I will tell you, being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing ever. It has to be one of the hardest things I have ever embarked on. And I've gone through a bunch of different things, but I will say being an entrepreneur is very difficult. And what gets me through is that intrinsic motivation, that why that I, came up with almost 3 years ago now. That's what gets me through the rough days, because then I can say, okay, Tiffany, well, why did you start this? And I actually have it written in my office on my whiteboard why I started this business. I can always refer back to it. It's not a paper that I lose. It's always there. So intrinsic motivation is so important. Extrinsic stuff is important too, but not as important as intrinsic. And I guess let me explain what that means a little bit. So intrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from within. And really, research shows us that intrinsic motivation allows us to get through things more. So for instance, if you were at a job and you were only there for the money, and you didn't have any intrinsic motivation to be there, the chances of you staying in that job are pretty much 0 to none long term, right? But if you have an intrinsic motivation, let's say your job is working at a nonprofit, well, your intrinsic motivation is helping the people that you serve, then you're more likely to stay at that job. So find your intrinsic motivation and keep that at the forefront. So who? You have to figure out who you're going to serve. Is it going to be 20-year-old females? Is it going to be 40-year-old males? Whatever it is, make sure you try to narrow it down as much as possible. Now, you might be saying, because I used to say this too, well, I want to help everybody. I want to serve everybody. And that may be true, but you have to have, in marketing, they use the term avatar. You have to have an avatar that you plan everything around. Now, if other people enjoy the content as well, then by all means, it is what it is, right? But you have to have an avatar to properly market and to properly put out what they want to hear. So think of your ideal client, or think of your ideal customer if you have a product, and write down what attributes you want that person to have. Do they live in the suburbs? Do they live in urban areas? How much do they make? Make the whole person. And then when you're going through and looking at your marketing and looking at your product or service, you make sure you tailor it to that person. Now, I will tell you, other people that might not look like your avatar will probably reach out for your services or your product, and that's fine, but just make sure you stay focused. Also, let's talk about that product or that service. What is it? What problem are you trying to solve for people? Because that's really all small business is. Every single small business that you see out here is trying to solve a problem, whether that is making sure people get their products fast, like Amazon, or maybe that is being a one-stop shop like Walmart. They're trying to solve a problem. So figure out what that problem is that you are trying to focus on. For instance, for me, the problem that I'm trying to solve is financial illiteracy, and it's a big problem, but I feel like that is why I started this business, is because I wanted to combat financial illiteracy. So you have to find out what problem your business is helping to solve. Then you have to figure out when. When do you want to launch? When do you want to put out a new product? When do you want to put out a new service? And make sure that you have that written down, because I can tell you from experience, and I'm by no means a golden child when it comes to this, but I am starting to get more into the habit of writing down SMART goals. And SMART means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And time-bound is the big one here. Make sure that you know when you are going to do something, because timing is everything, y'all. Timing is everything. I started this blog back in December of 2017. Woo! What a journey. Back in December of 2017. And as you know, December is a rough time for people. It's a rough time for people. I didn't plan it that way at the time, but now that I look back, I said I launched at a perfect time, because December is, people are maxing out credit cards for Christmas gifts, or, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever they're celebrating. It's the time of giving. It's the time of spending money. And so people are going to start trying to look for solutions to those high credit card bills, to that lack of budgeting, to, what they have in their savings account, or whatever the case may be. And that was a good time for me to start my blog. Now, that's coming from hindsight. I didn't do that purposely, but I want you to start using that process when you start thinking about launch dates. So I'm currently writing a book, and I already know when it's going to be released. I already know when I want it to be released now. And it's not even going to be released until next year, but you have to start putting things into the atmosphere, putting things into the universe that you want to get accomplished, and putting dates and putting time frames and all of that stuff around it. So make sure you have when. Now, if you're already in business, maybe it's a new product. Maybe it's a new service you're launching. Make sure you have it time bound so you can stick to it. Then you have to figure out where. Where are you going to market this product or service? Where are you going to house this product or service? These are all the things that you have to think about. Because, for instance, let's take social media, right? Everybody wants to be on social media. Everybody wants to market their business or service on social media. But do you know the difference in the social media channels? Do you know the difference between LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok? Do you know what your audience is on? If you don't know any of the answers to those questions, then you need to start researching that now. You need to start thinking about, okay, where is my audience? Where do they want to see my stuff? Is my audience big into reading? Or is my audience big into watching YouTube videos? Or is my audience big into listening to podcasts? These are all things that you need to start nailing down and hammering out before you start a business. But if you are in business, start taking these things into consideration, because I will tell you, for the first couple of years of Money Talk with Tiff, I was just blowing in the wind. I really did not have any real goals set up. I was just like, hey, I'm going to just put content out there and I'm going to just throw it to the wind and see what happens, kind of like throwing some spaghetti to the wall and seeing which one sticks. That's kind of how I was running my business. But now it's a little more directed and I'm seeing bigger gains because I'm directing it now. I'm not letting my business run me. I'm running my business. And then the last question that you have to ask is how. How are you going to get all of this content out? How are you going to get your products out? How are you going to get the service out? Do you have enough money saved up to make it happen? Do you need financing? Do you need help? Do you need to hire people? Do you need, there's a lot of different things that you need to think about when it comes to the how, because a lot of times businesses fail because they don't have enough capital to keep going. And when I say capital, I mean, money that they can put into their business as it grows. So a lot of times businesses fail within the first year, really, but really within 3 to 5 years, they fail because they run out of money. And so you have to figure out how you're going to get all these things done, because I know that you have a wonderful product or a wonderful service that you are thinking of right now. And you're like, where do I start? So that's why I wanted to do this episode, because I have been getting such an encore of people that are like, I want to do this. So answer who, what, when, where, why, and how if you're not already in business, and that way you can set yourself up for success. If you're already in business, think about these questions in terms of growth. So if you want to get into a new market, if you want to pivot, Money Talk with Tiff has pivoted a lot of times over these 3 years. I've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, until I figured out what I want to stick, So even if you are in business, ask yourself who, what, when, where, why, and how. Take it back to the basics. When did we learn this? Back in probably 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. When we are analyzing a story, we need to answer these questions. Go back to the basics is so important. And especially your why and your intrinsic motivation, because it's going to get rough. It's going to get hard. And that's what's going to bring you through. So this was just a quick episode. I didn't want to take up too much time. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Money Talk with Tiff podcast. For free resources and materials, head over to moneytalkwitht.com. And while you're there, why not sign up for our newsletter so you'll never miss an episode? Talk to you soon.